today we are going to talk about how to measure AI ROI using FinOps, and one of the hottest topics and one of the most mentioning things in the FinOps world these days. And to help me with that, we have this fantastic lineup with Larry from Cloud Zero, Bastien Martins from Cloud FinOps, me hosting, and Adam Richter from AWS. So the Fantastic Four, Fantastic Four, sorry, not four. It's going to be fun. We are going to have a lot of conversation, and here's the agenda. So. Basically, we are going to have Larry having a short presentation on how to measure AI ROI using FinOps. Then we are going to dive deep into the group panel where we are going to share our perspective on the topic and things that we've learned, all the interesting conversations that everyone has having about the topic, and then Q&A and open mic questions. So you can drop your questions along the presentation from Larry and during the group panel in the Q&A section. And please use the chat to put comments and anything during the whole event. But feel free to ask questions. And during the panel, we may get your questions as well because we want to answer the public's doubts as well, because that's where we try to provide value. So, Larry, whenever you're ready, you can start.
Thanks, Victor. All right. Share my screen here. All right. So today we're going to dive into how to measure AI ROI. I am Larry Advey, or Fred FinOps, the AI Economics Director here at Claude Zero. I'm a FinOps Foundation TAC member, Focus Maintainer, and LinkedIn Learning Instructor. So I'll take a few minutes here and dive into some content, and then we'll jump over the panel and the Q&A. That'll be much more exciting, I'm sure. But for now, what I'm thinking about when I think about AI ROI is, what are people talking about? And you've known Cloud Zero for a little while. You've seen every engineering decision is a buying decision. And we're thinking about this and we're evolving it from engineering to every decision is a buying decision. And not only are just engineers using AI, but pretty much people across the entire companies. People in marketing, sales, accounting, finance, leadership, whatever, right? So everything they're doing has some sort of cost or ROI associated with it, potentially at the end of the day. So it's much, much broader beyond engineering. And engineering is not just the only cost center of things. I thought this quote was interesting. If you've not seen this before, CEO Jensen with NVIDIA. If a $500,000 engineer isn't consuming at least $250,000 worth of tokens annually, he'll be deeply alarmed. Right? That 250K hopefully will have outcomes that far are above and beyond exceed the 500K that the engineer costs the company for, right? But still, for a company like the size of NVIDIA, the number of engineers at that scale or lower, that's a lot of money to be adding on addition to just salaries. But the real problem becomes it's a tempo issue. And within this, AI is a great thing to compare against cloud. Cloud had a somewhat gentle slope over time. Looking at things from a quarterly basis was generally good enough. But then you evolve today into AI. AI is 4 to 6x steeper. It's like this hockey stick of, up and to the right, but it's exponential. It's getting more and more and more and more. And like I said earlier, everyone's using it. The model mixes are changing weekly. Models come out, they get taken away, they come back. There's lots of conversations happening around this. How to optimize, how to look at costs, all those things. And then lastly, like the agent swarms can if you ever swarm something, you can end up spending a lot of money on things, and you may have to redo it because you weren't feeding the right prompt or the right context to make the agent successful. But it can make like a single engineer's spend look very small and quaint. And at the end of the day, the gap that matters is, finance sees what it costs, but there's like a decision there that I think everybody's made for the most part. And talking to to dozens and hundreds of people over the past several months about this. Very few have dipped their toes into this, this being AI. Very few have, are not dipping their toes. So very few are saying, oh, we just got a select number of people not doing it. Whereas everybody else is go, 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 go because of this, this ROI or value that gets produced from using AI. So the tempo produces these questions and these things that come up, and there's this shift that's happening. I'm seeing it happen. It's coming up all the time, every single conversation. And the first is, well, what did we spend? This is really yesterday's question. This is, I'll say, for lack of a better word, like solved to a point, right? You've got ERP systems, you've got FinOps, cloud cost management systems, you've got cloud providers who have their own systems to do this. Allocating things, it's mostly the same. There are some pros and cons with different vendors and things, but this is really what happened yesterday. Today, people are trying to get to what was it worth it, right? And this is not an easy thing to do, especially when revenue is such a lagging indicator of success. But there are things that showcase value. Engineering, for instance, and it's not any one thing is what I'm seeing, and it's not number of lines shipped, it's not number of commits, it's not pull requests, cycle time, but potentially a mix of all those things, plus maybe epics, tickets. You have to look at the before and the after on that to see was it worth it. But we don't stop here, and if you studied unit economics like I have, you get to thinking about like it used to be called like the pinnacle or the panacea of like, this is where we want to go from a FinOps perspective. And very few companies are at this level of stage, which is, where do I spend more? Where do I spend more? Where do I invest more? And this is really the winner's question. If you're able to understand your data so granularly to where you say, this is working really well over here, and here's why. Well, let's do more of that, right? But it's not easy to do it. And so there's this formula. It's relatively straightforward, I'll say, right? The efficiency rate of things. It's very basic, but easily understood financial formula. You have a value of outcome minus some fully allocated AI costs of outcomes divided by that cost times 100, you get some percentage, right? It's a calculated item. That value in the upper left is really can be various different things. It can be revenue, but it could also be hours saved, it could be total removed, cycle times, et cetera, et cetera. Standardizing on what makes sense and what actually moves the needle for you and your customers is the most important thing. But then going back to, I'll say, FinOps 101, allocation remains the cornerstone of everything we do. If we cannot allocate the costs, the revenue, the telemetry that are coming in, we cannot be successful in this endeavor. So the hard part is getting to that one number, fully allocated costs. So every model call, GPU hour, pipeline dollar traced to the outcome. So you can say without a doubt, this is what Larry spent on this particular project, repository, system. And then with this value conversation, you can shift it from spend to investment, which is a really cool thing to do, but you can't do because if you don't have that level of allocation. And what does fully allocated means? What is this? What does this demand? What does this need at the end of the day? So first and foremost, you need some level of telemetry at the source. Who did what was it, and why per token? So what's the repo? What's the team? What's the feature? It's this granularity of data that you could ask somebody, like, what did you work on? And they could tell you, right? But it's going to be some percentage of inaccurate. And this tells you the what, and then it answers like, well, why did we spend X, Y, and Z on this particular person with AI, right? And building on top of this, you're then able to allocate back the repos, the teams, the feature, the Jira tickets, the linear tickets, ServiceNow, GitHub, et cetera, to so that you can lean into what's the cost per feature, per product, per customer. You can see where things are working really, really well, what you can invest more into potentially, or where you should pivot otherwise. But it's all around the allocation, but you need the telemetry to do it. And then lastly is the value. So once you understand the cost per this or the cost per that, the value per item, then you get to really dive into and truly understand, not only for you, for others across your company and your business and your teams, your outcome that each unit maps to. Is it revenue based? Again, that's a really, really bad, I'll say it's a good indicator, but it's really delayed from a lagging perspective. But there are other things that happen much sooner. So you have to fully allocate, again, FinOps 101, it's all about allocation at the end of the day, allocation, granularity. So leaning into what is your unallocated percent across the board within this information. So what's your unallocated percent by repo, by team, by feature? If you've got a team of engineers working on 10 to 15 different repos, if you can't align those costs of AI, Anthropic, OpenAI, et cetera, by repo, that's unallocated. It's 100% unallocated. You don't know, right? But you need to make that transparent. You need to talk about it. This is a problem. And if we had this solved, this is what we're able to do with it. And so the best way I found to kind of really talking and thinking about this is is we've been drinking our own champagne at Cloud Zero. So at Cloud Zero, I'm user zero. And Fred, Larry, we measure our own AI ROI with our own practice. And so I use agentic AI to produce this good morning report on a daily basis for me and for others, because we're looking at business indicators, lagging, leading indicators, things like that, where this automates AI cloud spend, et cetera, but it's taking the fully allocated AI costs with the value that's associated with them and getting this efficiency rate so that you can compute that at the end of the day. Bringing in things like margin, doing anomaly to pull request correlation. There's lots of different things that happen on this, and I would do this manually previous. A year ago, it was mostly manual. But now it's entirely automated and it's scheduled. So when I come in, others come in the morning, boom, we can see what's happening. It's the current state of things. And at the end of the day, the same telemetry that allocates the spend also produces the value evidence for us. We're using our own tools to actually do this and drive this forward. And so it's terribly exciting. We can actually back into and see, hey, we are a company who's very much supporting AI development. So much, right? Bill Buckley, our VP of engineering, has talked about this on LinkedIn. And each engineer has a $5,000 a month budget. And well, what are we getting with that, right? And if we don't have the level of granularity and allocation, we don't know what that cost is. Not everyone's spending 5K. I have Fred has spent more in a couple months here. But I'm driving a lot of value through that, and I can actually understand what that looks like. And so with this, just a couple of screenshots here. So a working example of drinking your own champagne is this thing called AI signals, where as user zero, I can see real-time data as it's coming in. What users running what models, what source, how much tokens, cash, cost. There's a lot of other fields we add to this. I've got several different views here, but this comes in real time, and we're able to respond to it and do this and do that. Not only myself, but others. So we actually policed each other. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why are you spending all this money on Fable, like, for an example, just writing emails or something, right? But that has kind of come up. And we are questioning, like, what's the value we're getting from this? But we actually have the data to provide the answers now. And the data looks more something like this. Gets closer to, well, here's the actual activity that the user's doing. Is it debugging? Is it testing? Is it feature development? Is it automation? Is it potentially something else entirely? Maybe it's automated AI, given that it's not in dimension on this screen. But there's lots of different ways to slice and dice and look at this that the AI providers don't provide you. And you need a level of real-time telemetry in line to provide this information. So if you look at this and we're spending most of our time on feature development, well, how can we reduce the time and cost for feature development to work on other things potentially? So this is something that allows us to not only ask the question, but actually answer it and then pivot and make decisions. GitHub repository is something that comes up as well. So now as Larry's doing work, I can see which GitHub repository, how much cost with what models, what tokens, et cetera, are going to that actual repository. And then with repository, you have project or Jira Epic or however your allocation hierarchy works, right? Getting that source level granularity data allows you to build on top of it. So then you can answer, well, how much did we invest in this particular project over its lifetime in AI specific development costs? And that's something that we provide. So I've talked about pivoting on things. There's 3 different things you want to think about when you look at this. Well, is this paying off, right? Is our investment, does it make sense? As a leader, as an owner of a company, is it paying off? Cool, great, it is. We have the information, the costs are there, the revenue, all that great data. Let's fund more of that. If something's underperforming, the reality, either fix it, get a date put in place, or pivot on it, right? De-invest in it, invest in something else. Then maybe lastly, maybe it's too early to call, but at least you have the information to drive a decision. At the end of the day, innovation is definitely allowed, right? But indecision's not. I have a shirt that I often wear that's, data-driven. That wasn't very data-driven of you. And if you don't have the data, you can't make the decision, right? But you want to allow the level of innovation. And a kill list, effectively pivoting away from something that's not working, is a feature of the practice of the company that you work for, and something we should endeavor to yep, okay, this isn't working, let's do this instead, right? And iterate and have the data and do it as quickly as possible, fail fast. So what FinOps must own next? 1, governing the new spend, build, operate, and serve it. Understanding starts before governance. Granularity and allocations as the foundation of FinOps is critical to everything that comes. 2, proving the realized value, unit economics on every single dollar. And then 3, automation of guardrails at AI speed. So the ideal scenario is humans set the policy, agents enforce it. There are companies out there that talk to that are using this information to make real world decisions with their agents. And it's awesome. It's really, really cool stuff they're doing. So my call to action, start with one initiative, compute one right today. Don't wait, just start jumping into this and thinking about it. And value can not only be dollars, or to be something else, but what drives value for the company, and then leaning into that. So lastly, the questions I'll leave with, what do we spend? Do you know? Was it worth it? That's where we're at today. That's a lot of challenges. A lot of people are struggling with this. It was a very apparent at FinOps X. And then the third one is, where do I spend more? I think that's really, really interesting. And it's somewhere we should be driving towards in the future. So, Victor,
Yeah, that was awesome. I think there is a lot of value in that, and there are a few questions in the chat. Some of them are more related to, I think, to the Cloud Zero product, and everything, and some of them are more generic that we'll probably go through them in the panel discussion. So I think people really loved it. You can react in the chat with if you liked it or yeah. But we are going to start with the panel. So I want to start with questions about maybe I can start with you, Bastien, about pain points because Larry has mentioned a lot about how to measure the value and the outcomes and everything, but I wanted to maybe go through the dark side and the pain points that we are seeing. So where are you seeing more pain points on measuring this ROI and where are the problems appearing when on the cost for AI?
Yeah, good question, Victor. So first, thanks for having me. Congrats, Larry, for the presentation. 100% aligned. So I run a consulting firm here based in Paris for 3 years and a half, and very pragmatic. So we were laughing because some of you, if you were FinOps Amsterdam, September 2025, we're just saying, well, we all see the AI spend doubling every month. And we say, do you see that? Yeah, we see that. But at the time, a year ago, it was not the elephant in the room. So, but I say, well, in my mind, for the customers we have, if we double every month, well, February, March, April, there will be a problem. So my personal experience that with two customers, so anonymized for sure, but bill shocks. So bill shocks happen in April, and funny story. One is Claude M365 connectors activation. Do you remember? It was a GA back in October. And when the people, in France, we take a lot of holidays. But headquarters in France, people back from holidays, February, March, the problem was, as always, the configuration. So the context. So instead of having a window that was relevant to recap the emails, the window 200K tokens context window per employee multiplied by 1,000 of employees, and boom, and then you have a bill shock. And another one was R&D. When you don't know what you are looking for, you can search the context very far, and the infinite loop that we know in cloud and we know in development for many years and decades. But in AI, we have all observed that as it is like this. This is kind of a friend of mine called it horror stories that happen and that make the people then react. And then back to Larry said, first of all, to have in control in terms of visibility and to share the same language is the foundation we know in FinOps. So that's my personal stories when he had accelerated. And now everybody, of course, talking about FinOps for AI and tokenomics.
No, that's a very nice story, and yeah, definitely a bill shock is always a kind of a moment of realization that you have a problem.
Exactly.
That's cool. And on your side, Adam, do you have any stories on that side? I'm sure you have too.
I can definitely touch on some of the pain points. I was at FinOps X recently and talked to a ton of customers, and I think the first thing that they wanted to talk about was some of the pain points they were experiencing. And the big one that I heard come up repeatedly was allocation. They just see the costs right now easy at the model level or at this like high level, but they want to see it more granularly split into things like users or tasks or teams or products, kind of like what Larry was pointing out. And that step, I feel like, is where a lot of customers are right now, especially FinOps teams. Like we could see the big rock, the bill, but chunking it down into where it's supposed to provide value is one big piece. But then the second piece that's like starting to become more relevant, I think is also partly the purpose of this call, is then taking those chunks and mapping them to where they're providing value for the business, whether that be revenue, whether that be product, or even some kind of productivity element. All of these things are ways that it can be providing value. And I think that's also a common misconception, is that providing value always has to be like dollars in revenue. It doesn't always have to be, right? It can be supporting getting more clicks or more video watches or, things that are not necessarily directly revenue, but are also, I would say, like equally important, or closing more bugs or preventing more fraud, right? These are all things that I think all of us would agree in a business are super important from a business's ROI or a business's function. But tying those things together with the AI that's helping drive those things is now the important kind of part of defining ROI of these things.
Yeah, I totally agree on that one. Like what Larry said and you raised is that we need to first define like what are the KPIs that are relevant for the business unit you are working for, and then work backwards like to measure the value. Like you can even I can think of an example that you can even like measure the KPIs or the progress based on GitHub issues, and then you deconstruct that progress that you make using the development on AI or how much this feature costs and everything to measure the progress through that completing that key result or KPI and the KPI progress based on that one. So I think you raise a very interesting point of
You reminded
the
me one
only
other.
KPI is not revenue.
Yeah, you reminded me one other thing, Victor, is that this isn't unique to AI, right? It's like
Yep.
tagging and
Yeah.
kind of calculating these things. We've had to do this with Claude and a lot of other stuff. Crawl, walk, run. Start with something simple. Like the simplest KPI you can do right now is bundle all of your AI costs and divide it into like tokens. So what's your cost per, say, million tokens? That'll give you a very, very high level metric that you can see week over week or month over month to know, am I progressing in a more efficient way? Like, are we getting more caching? Are we using maybe more open source models? Or are we proceeding in a more expensive kind of per token? Maybe we're using more expensive state-of-the-art models. So don't feel like you have to like immediately get to the run stage where you've got this directly mapped to exactly where in your business it's providing value. Start with something simple so that you can get the high level metric, and then you can kind of piece it out from there.
And to go, Victor, on your example, so we'll see the more and more the association, I think, starting from there, not reinventing the wheel, not going there. We know in FinOps and the unit economic involving the business, this is the objective, but the core work depends on the context we are. One very pragmatical thing is that the amount spent per person, it's very important. Now the edge of the credit will be behind us with the API invoice directly to corporate, to enterprise. And the numbers of commits or number of pull requests merged, then this ratio, it's very pragmatic. I think in many organizations we can do that. At scale, automation will of course be needed. But I think this one can be super important. And then by anomaly detection to see where, in some cases, and the $5,000 per X commit will have sense. But then you can isolate some anomalies, I think.
Yeah, we can apply what we learn in FinOps from anomaly detection to include in AI. And one question I think that is recurrent is the tagging, let's say the tagging difficulties and let's say the allocation difficulties on the request, because I'm going to try and frame it based on what I've sensed from the public is that there is a lot of providers and there is a lot of sources where you can get AI spend. Same that we had in cloud is kind of similar, but you have it. I think it's more control. We have different consumption models in AI, and we can have, we can consume Claude directly through API gateway, through the AI gateways, through the Bedrock, or through the provider itself. So maybe Larry, how are you, if you have an example, how are you seeing the way to solve that challenge of, the multiple sources of AI spend?
Yeah, so multiple sources and being able to allocate, I'll say like a person is a shared resource, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a S3 bucket or a database is a shared resource, right? Any of us people that are using AI are generally not working on just one particular project or one particular thing. I know at times I have multiple agents running at the same time, and so each of those sessions are important and different in terms of value generation, and so you can using proxies and potentially some other providers, you can add some tagging into that. The problem is that trying to do that, I'll say manually, and keeping track of tagging for this versus that on a developer's or an engineer or a person using the AI models to go do some work, then requires them to actually go do that every single time. They need to like shift this or do this or do that. Like tell the agent this is for this or this is for that. And so what I was showcasing there is a bit of, I'll say, telemetry technology we've developed, where it does it dynamically. So we know we want to understand what's GitHub, what's Jira, Linear, the user activity, the project, et cetera, right? And so you're picking that up and you're dynamically tagging things and tagging with sessions and other detail as it's happening in real time. And that's the secret sauce. I'll say that you do kind of need to back into to truly answer allocations. And it's not just the difference between 90 and 100%. It's a lot lower than that, because viewing humans as a shared resource. Again, Adam's working on lots of different things, right? And his boss may care about this project more than that project. And if you don't know how much you're really spending between the two, realistically, then it's terribly difficult. So it does it dynamically versus statically. And you can micromanage API keys and tags and things too, but we're finding that that's terribly inefficient use of time.
Oh, that's a good answer, and I think that make it good basically to be more dynamically rather than depending on human action that the API keys are configured properly and everything works fine, and you assume that humans are going to make a mistake. So another question that I see from the chat that Greg put here, and I think it's very interesting, is on the development side. So maybe kind of we can relate from what I said is how do we handle the differences between development process, and how do we measure maybe the ROI that we are getting in the development side, given that we have a different set of tools, different repos, like the repo structure could be, mono repo, multi-repo, etc. So maybe I'm going to go with Adam. Like maybe how are you seeing that differences in your work on work from others on that side?
Yeah, I would say that's one of the most popular use cases I see is developer productivity. And I think the important part with mapping value is to be careful of what business value metric you select. Like you don't want to tie it to things like lines of code or PRs or things, because those are, I consider them gameable metrics. This is a good hard law situation, right? If you tie it to lines of code, then your developers could easily just write into their scripts, like make sure you add extra lines of documentation to everything you create, right? And now we've doubled the lines of code it's producing. So that's a support metric. So it's important for kind of developer ROI is to tie it to things that are actually providing value to the business. So are they closing, bugs out? Are they adding new features to software? The things that are actually producing an outcome. And then kind of the caveat I would give you there is to be careful, because those things are all not equal, right? One bug to close may be a lot more complex than another one. So in addition to the things that are providing business value, make sure you layer in the complexity of those things so that you can understand and tie that back. And then it's just math, right? Then it's just the cost of the tokens that developer are using versus the bugs and their complexity, or versus the features that they were able to output. And that you can understand then and do that calculation and say, okay, was it worth $500 worth of tokens to close a bug? Or does it make more sense for profitability wise if that was lower at 250? And that's when you can start thinking about the optimizations or not. But then you can make a business decision, like Larry said. Maybe is it very, very worth it to spend 500 tokens to close a bug, and we should do a lot more of it. So now we should lean into it more heavily and invest more into AI. But until you have that information, it's hard to make that decision.
That's a very good answer. Bastien, do you have anything on that side?
Yeah, I think what the FinOps Foundation back in 2019, the unit economics, the fact to talk to the business. I come from a DevOps, and in DevOps, between the Dev and Ops, we have a reconciliation to do, and then the Fin and DevOps, the concatenation. Now we have a unique opportunity in this market, because tokenomics and the fact that it is visible from the board. We all collectively have to go further into the business use cases. And we started with, of course, Entropy help on Cloud Code for the developers, but not only on the business line. So I have two examples. One is the number of tickets resolved by a telco provider, which is a giant multinational. And on the NOC, the Network Operation Centers, they spend energy and time to demonstrate, because they're very data-driven for many years and decades, but the numbers, the acceleration of resolve tickets and the ticketing, and fully AI, faster mean time to resolve, and the MTTR on the field. Because when you go on the field, the cost to send the people on the field much, much more higher. And the second one is contract analysis. So I will do my French. But the fact that Mistral AI, they are very good on OCR, their specific use case. And then I'm a great believer of open weight models. And we know that this world will be agentic and very specialized. So if you compare one that's very niche and very good on OCR compared to the large models that we all know, but more generalized, lots of context, lots of token, etc., probably and more complexity to have that. But when you can analyze contracts and with having semantic chunking, context compression, 800 token instead of 40,000, that's make a huge difference. It's like not having a PhD to wash the dishes, or not having a Ferrari to drive 50 meters to buy your baguette or your burger. And I think for all of us, that's the challenge, to help customers finding the right tuning.
Yeah, you don't want to definitely use a Ferrari to get your bread. So, Larry, do you want to add on that? Like, what are the use cases or the problems that you are seeing with, allocation to development side?
Yeah, I think the development side is like I showed, and we get bits of information from the providers today with the APIs, and there's different ways to kind of slice that, right? It's a bit easier to do the engineering and development side, to be honest, because it's all based in technology. There's GitHub, there's Jira, there's Linear, there's data that you can back into, right? And I can't remember who posted it in chat, because there's lots of comments kind of flowing through here. But what about non-engineers? How do you gauge success of AI adoption and implementation and usage of people in HR, accounting, finance, marketing, et cetera, given that they don't have commits, they don't have pull request numbers, they don't have Jira tickets. Like, you go back to what Bastien was saying, which is there are these other things, like if you've got customer success or marketing, other things, there's levels of engagement, there's these other maybe metrics that they're looking at, and trying to either directly or indirectly line up to those KPIs and metrics. Like, AI helped produce these either faster, or did this so it was actually a better outcome at the end of the day, a higher net promoter score from your customers, for instance, or like AI, obviously a lot more code, right? But things you need to look at is how many bug tickets are being submitted to after the fact. So there's this you've got to take a step back, and this is where I'm at now, talking with our VP of HR and other people in different industries outside of engineering. I think, how do you gauge success with this, and how are you thinking about this? And then how do I bring that together, like back to FinOps and economics, to build that ROI story of all? And it's not solved yet, but it's very, very interesting. I'll say it, and challenging.
Yeah, I think also, but that's something that we talked also in the conversation in FinOps is that now, so like the difference with AI consumption and cloud consumption is that mostly cloud was used by the engineering team. And like even a subset of the engineering team was handling the cloud cost or was influencing the cloud cost, let's say, even though, there is some additional part that will use it. But with AI, like everyone is using it. So everyone is, could create costs, and you need to be super careful. Apart from the development side, which is also very important, like now everyone could be a developer. Like now, before it was like by coding, and now it's actually creating code with Cloud Code that actually is the same work that that a developer could do. So that's super interesting. And I want to move on, and maybe this one will go to Adam because it's more, I think, cloud oriented or cloud AI workload oriented. They say Ashutosh. says that budget and cost alerts in the case of AI workloads is a challenge because of the cost data from the latency of the cost data from the console. So how, like, because of the delay, you can get a possibility that, there is an anomaly and you take some time to react. So what are your advice on preventing, let's say, AI workload anomalies?
Yeah, and that's common feedback I hear because cost data goes through calculation. So it takes a little bit before you see it. I think sometimes, a couple times per day it'll land, or 24 to 48 hours is often the case for anomalies. And for AI, a lot can happen in that amount of time, especially if there's an outlier or something that's gone rogue and is looping. And I think it's important in FinOps to get out of only the dollar mindset and to start getting comfortable looking at usage as well. And you can see, especially in AWS with CloudWatch, you can see usage in virtually real time within 2 to 5 minutes of the data coming through. So you can see token usage and different things by model, by user identities with IAM and different projects. And by doing that, then you could see much more rapidly what's happening. And if there's a spike, yes, it won't directly tell you like what the dollars are, but you can back into that, right? If you know so many tokens of a model are used or that it's doubled in the last 5 minutes, that's anomaly, and that's something that's important to go run down. So I think, us in this space now to be able to be more reactive, it's important to get out of just the standard billing data, which does typically have a lag, and that's not unique to AWS. That's like really with like a lot of different providers because like it has to go through computations and validations. But get yourself where you're comfortable actually looking at the usage data. And then to the other thing that you said there, like logs, there should be some kind of analysis if possible as well to understand how these things are being used. Because if you don't have some kind of logging, is an AI out there just looping and repeatedly doing the same request? That won't show up as an anomaly. It'd be a flat line of it constantly being used over and over and over, but providing zero value because it's constantly trying to solve something maybe agentically that it's failing to do. So having the right monitors in place is very, very important here.
Yeah, that could get stuck. And also, like Luik, I know Luik is from the AWS team as well. Like he mentioned about giving a CloudWatch alarm that is about 5 minutes of reactiveness. So I know a lot of people leverage CloudWatch for controlling that, and I think that now you can have, like, if I'm not mistaken, like intelligent tiering for storage in your logs. I think they release it like sometime, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you can have a better, like, the cost for storing your logs is not that much. So you can definitely cannot be worried, and you can prevent some issues instead of waiting to the cost billing data. And maybe moving on to another question that is very interesting. So thanks everyone for dropping the question from Stefan. And maybe this one go to Bastien because he mentioned about other sides of the software development, and maybe we'll go back to that topic. It's like, how would you advise companies that how they can handle AI costs that happen outside of, let's say, the software development and application usage? So like NotebookLM, Claude Chat, etc., that goes through the web. So all the time and spend that goes through the web, that because every provider has their own API, portal, their everything. So what are your thoughts on that side?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So I think, yeah, it has been mentioned, Larry. It's so the MCP gateway open router that is now very popular to have, like aggregated, but we know then there will be a percentage to pay more fee. So that's we are very creative in this industry. We solve a problem and create a new one and go further. So again, my answer, and I do not have a specific answer, but what we do, it's on the particular context, as we did in FinOps, to start small, to start understanding, talk to the people, make the people talk, exactly what Adam said, and Larry, the people we're going to involve would be much more broader. It would be maybe all the company. So the profile and stakeholders will be very different. So very pragmatic. I work with a partner called Growth Systems, and what we do workshops on a dedicated, let's say, platform, ontology platform. And sometimes we compare LLM plus context versus LLM plus RAG. We compare SLM versus LLM, and the ticketing use cases I was mentioning to you, for example, the contract analysis. And I think it's very pragmatic at the use case level before it go to the production. Why? Because the cloud FinOps has touched us. The sooner you catch the problem, you can fix it. And in terms of re-engineering, in terms of redesigning, the better it is. So the shift left more than ever, because we see growth out like this, the more we can do. And another topic, maybe the link with the developers. Sometimes people will say, well, there is a contradiction because we are encouraged to spend money and to go for productivity. Exactly what Larry has shared from NVIDIA to say, I encourage to go for that. But then we see the waste. And sometimes you can talk to the soul of people with green AI, which can be antagonist term. But in Europe, I think there is a possibility to say what's about the waste. And we all know AWS and other CSP, you have the physical capacity limitations. And so sometimes the drivers to have the people talk to each other on specific use cases can also be to touch to the value, to say we can do a better job. And the sooner we shift left on those use cases, the better will it be for the agentic era on the project into production. So that's why I'd observe and my personal conviction.
Well, that's very interesting, and I think you mentioned about the usage of focus in the chat. So yeah, that could be also like really helpful. So yeah, and I think I was trying to digest one of the questions to make it like more and I think it adds to the shift left thing because maybe we can translate it to what Bastien was saying is that now a lot of the infrastructure itself could be written by AI through coding with Claude Code or whatever tool you consider. So now, like maybe shift left takes more relevance than ever because the infrastructure is defined at the early stage and it's influenced also by AI. So how would be your advice to improve that shift left practice, especially like on the code level, on the Terraform, like tips for people handling Terraform? Would you be using like PR reviews that include cost reviews? What are your tips or tricks? I know this is a difficult question, but I try to digest it as much as possible. So I don't know if Adam, Bastien, or Larry, whichever you want.
I could provide a little bit of insight there. Like, I don't think that AI makes this any harder, right? Because the guardrails you have in place, whether you create a Terraform or CloudFormation yourself or AI creates it, should still prevent it from doing anything that's against your organizational policies. So that's like protection number one. Where I think AI actually provides an advantage here, though, is that you can give AI a harness or instructions or steering docs or some kind of reference files that also make the AI intelligent when it's creating these CloudFormation and Terraforms to follow good optimization practices or rules or things that are important to your contracts or pricing or just anything that's unique to your environment. It can follow that more easily than somebody having to remember all that stuff when they're creating these things. So in my opinion, at least, I think it already, in a sense, has the ability to shift left because it can reference things in a way that's a lot more easy than us having to do it manually.
I'll say coupling with what Adam was saying here. Yes, it's all about context. EO put it in there, education guardrails in the chat. It's all about education. It's all about context, right? An extraordinarily smart model that can do some really awesome things, right? But if you don't provide it the context, it's going to fail. And then even though you may provide it all the context, it may decide just not to do this one part of it that it was really super critical and was crystal clear right there, right? And that's why you have another agent coming back after the fact. And I've heard like different approaches, like scientific approach, or like old man, like get off my lawn type of thing approach, or it's just like being really skeptical to what was actually done. Did it match what was actually intended and expected? And then working through it from that perspective. So you have these levels of let's go do the thing and then validate the thing is actually being done as expected, right? And skepticism all the way around. But then evolving when you go do the thing in the first place, so that iteration is much faster too. But it's certainly a challenge, and you should use agents to do different things. And just like with FinOps, right? You have people of all different types of backgrounds and experiences. And most often, I learn the most from people who are just newer to this space, asking really awesome questions. And so, like with agents, you have an agent coming in and maybe doesn't have the context, but understands the infrastructure and some other things, and then can actually look at it. So you can have agents paired together, and across models too. You may be using like an Amazon model to do this, or Anthropic or OpenAI, and they'll have different perspectives and different thoughts about it.
Yeah, a new pair of eyes, it's always refreshing. So in this case, it's a new model or a new agent, but that's cool. It's good to see the similarities of the usual development. It still applies to how you can do, let's say, agentic development. Is same practices. Is the only thing is now is AI. Super. And yeah, what Loic said is, the data source and the context, yeah, leveraging, RAG and all these technologies that you can make to, ingest as much information as efficiently as possible. Because what also Bastien mentioned about the context is like you can have, a lot of tools, a lot of skills possible, and that makes the model doubt about what's right or not. So creating a specialized agents with the right set of skills, I think is what you would like to have in a, after all, if you think it in a human way, it's like you want for, practice work, you want a specialty that wants a delivery set of point. And then if you want to do another tool, you set another set of skills and another set of possibilities and tools to do. You don't want to do, I don't know, a presentation with Word, for example. So you would like the right set of skills with the right set of tools.
And maybe Victor,
yeah.
to complete that, I don't have a crystal ball, but what Adam has said on the guardrails, 100% agree. Sometimes we say, the cyber security and FinOps being transversal, having a lot in common. It's back to governance and processes. And I think AI, because of the speed of that, it will really help accelerate companies who have solid foundations. The processes, the governance, the tooling in places. Larry, 100% telemetry observability to make the link with the business applications. Unfortunately, some companies were late on that and rushing on AI like there is no tomorrow. We can already see problems, and the way to correct that the proper way, it's back to governance and what you put in place. So I think it's an accelerator for the good and the bad, but I already see some companies taking competitive advantage. It takes 12, 18, 24 months to take that, but to industrialize. And I'm a big believer of industrialization at scale, which is everything except easy. But I think we are really in this era where AI will be a competitive differentiator for business. And the expert who has helped build the infrastructure and cloud, I think more than ever important to be part of this business conversations.
Yeah, that's true. And what you mentioned, the industrialization side, like the standardized process, the governance, the having the guardrails set up for that. So I think it relates and also with another question. So with the best practices on governance. So we have shared the the usage of CloudWatch to maybe implement some logs in general. So do you have maybe, Larry, any best practices that we haven't shared already in the chat about AI governance, best practices on AI governance, especially for for cost as well?
Yeah, I would say starting small with some sort of caps associated with it by user, and then kind of growing from there. In my experience, and I think hopefully you all will agree too, and many others, that there comes a level of education that's been brought up quite a bit in chat. You need to learn, train yourself to go do this thing, right? But there's a lot of inefficiencies when it comes to actually learning to do it. And you're going to fail. You're going to send a prompt off to go do this, and you're going to learn from it and learn from it and learn from it, right? You're not going to come out the gate and start one-shotting things left and right. It's just not going to happen. It's all about context. What you can do for it versus what it can do for you is like the best suggestion I received about 7-8 months ago. And that really clicked for me. And it's all about context. So from a governance standpoint, starting out with caps by user, be honest, like in my experience, the $100 a month subscriptions for OpenAI and Anthropic others, I have to really be cooking to hit that personally, to hit that 5-hour window limit, right? But the $100 caps me at $100 a month, which is great. I don't want to spend $5,000 myself, right? So setting some sort of like cap on that, but then also producing recommendations either through either you could from a governance perspective, you can use things like LLM or other proxies to help you this model or that model. Bastien talked about Open Router, right? Open Router, Open Code. There are these open third-party systems that enable you to use this versus that, and you're only paying for certain things. And so education, the cap on potential budget and expense, like a hard stop, but then also understanding like as it's happening and checking like how much did I spend for this versus that, which they're like the cloud, they're all these providers are incentivized not to really tell you on a real-time basis kind of what you're spending, right? Because they'd rather just bill you for it. But there's ways to look at it, look at usage, look at cost, and we have to keep pushing back on them and saying, please give the information, please give information as real time as possible. And Anthropic over the past year has evolved quite a bit. The others are still kind of catching up on that perspective, but starting small and then going from there.
I think that's really good advice. I see. Well, a lot of questions on the go. I was trying to maybe Adam, do you have any tips also that you can share with the audience about that?
A couple optimization tips to leave you with, I guess, because that's the place I live most, is make sure you're open-minded to the open weight models. I think those have gotten really strong these days, and don't necessarily have to be tied to one of like the commercial models. It's tons of the open weight ones. I've seen multiple stories from large companies that have been able to embed those into their environments to save quite a bit. So experiment with that. And then definitely if you're not already looking into caching, I've seen a lot of large organizations getting, especially if you have reproducible stuff where it's looking at similar code sets over and over, or things that are kind of repeatable data, repeatable context. Make sure you have caching enabled for those types of situations, because I've seen a considerable savings for some very large customers by taking advantage of that. And then lastly, routing. You don't have to pick one model, right? Like I think everybody figures like, oh, I just got to pick one. What's the best one? And they go with that. Routing now allows, whether it be through Light LLM or even natively inside like clouds like us, AWS, it can make intelligent decisions on where that prompt should go. And it might be a simple question that an easy model or smaller model can answer. It might be a complicated question that needs to go to the heavier weight model. And if that's the case, overall, the net of that is you save. So make sure as your environment matures, that you're starting to take advantage of some of these technologies, because they will help soften the growth of those AI costs.
That's really nice. And know that those are a couple of tips that really can help people. And I think we are on the top of the hour, but maybe we can have, there was a question about, how to measure on outcome without OKRs. I basically answer about, if you are not doing OKRs with the objective key results, you can do it with KPIs, and you need to have some way to measure. So either you use a key result or a KPI, some kind of thing, and then you relate I think Larry's presentation made it super nice to measure it based on the outcome. And so that outcome needs to have some kind of metric, however you want to put it, like, and that's the tricky point is, the right
And
metric.
And maybe Victor, to go there, the metric, the KPI, the unit economic, let's call it how is it? Probably exactly what Adam has described, 100% agree, and to have technical metrics and that we can use to serve business metrics. And then the famous unit economics, where it's not that popular or spread across organizations. Now we talk, and if you remember the example of the tickets or the contracts, the MTTR, how will you reconcile the mean time to repair if you do not have linked to how the AI has helped you in terms of quality of the data, in terms of speed, and in terms of cost associated? So again, I think it's an opportunity to have more strategic conversations, data-driven, as we have always done, but to go further, and that the unit economics being perceived more strategic, and of course, lots of complexity and lots of technology behind. But I'm very confident that because of the associated costs behind, the board wants to see the value, and we are well placed to help them measure that.
Yeah. No, that's really thanks for adding that. And also wanted maybe well, I'll add another question that I think it's interesting is the possibility to limit models on the department, on the org, and on the the teams, on the users. I think it's also something Larry mentioned about the allocating or putting a limit on the user and the team. So Larry, do you have any insights or any tips? I think that should be possible, but wanted to put your perspective on that.
Yeah. I know we're over time here. I think what Bastien was saying there and what we've talked about throughout, it's going to be hard to get things kind of pulled together and answered like one KPI, one specific item fits all, right? Or I would say you start with, and I had this written up in chat, and I was hoping you'd call on me, and I'll do it rather than enter, is listen to your leadership. What are they talking about? What do they care? And then how can you back into, is it margin? Is it this? Is it that? What's that KPI? What's that metric? What's that item that they really truly care about? And then lean back into it from an ROI story, and then linking together AI to that yes or no, either directly or indirectly, to show ups and downs based on cost and usage.
Yeah. No, I totally agree on that, and I think you're totally right. You need to know like what the company and the business wants to get about. So I think that's all for today. We're already 3 minutes over the hour. So thanks everyone for joining. I think it was wonderful to have so many questions today. It was like a bit overwhelming sometimes. So it was very, very nice that there is a lot of interest in the topic. So we'll try to make more content on this to try and answer those. And thanks to all the panelists for being here today. So thanks, Bastien, Adam, Larry, for your wonderful contribution. I think there is a lot of insights here. So we'll send you the recording so you can take notes more calmly and get all the info digested. And thanks everybody, and see you in the next one. Hope you had a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
You guys. Bye.